Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Not Content Podcast. My name is Jerome Cuson, joined, as always, by my colleague Brian. Please leave a 4 or 5 star review to get those algorithms going on Apple and Spotify. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Click the bell icon for notifications. We are going to be continuing our discussion of both Moonlighting and Miami Vice, as we will be discussing 2 episodes of each once again. And Brian, this week we are going into some surprisingly dark territory, but Bruce Willis, by God, is in 3 of the 4 episodes that we are talking about this week.
Timing, right? So, like I mentioned before, it's the role on Miami Vice that got him the job on Moonlighting, but I don't think Jerome was expecting such a dark performance by Bruce
Yeah,
Willis because he is,
he's in his heel
woo!
mode.
It's full heel mode, like let's say 70s heel mode, not even 80s, like 70s. I'm gonna beat my wife kind of heel in the Memphis territory kind of thing. Like I'm sure that Memphis
Yeah,
didn't actually
he's a
do that, but
genuinely
it's
terrible heel.
borderline that era. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of territory. So he's an abusive son of a bitch in this episode, but we'll get to that a little later on. Let's talk about Moonlighting first. Brad Dourif, my goodness, as a priest. The timing of this is weird because we've been talking about watching Exorcist III for a while, and I think we're kind of lining that up with October this year finally with like sequels of other horror movies. So that's kind of like a foreshadowing what's to come. But I couldn't help but think of like him dressed as a priest. He's an Exorcist III, which would come out 3 years later, right? And then all of a sudden, like there's this Exorcist reference by Bruce Willis, and I was like, oh, maybe it was like fortuitous that Brad Dourif would end up in Exorcist III because he just does this role here with an Exorcist reference. But he's kind of a perv. He's a perv in this episode, Jerome. And what's the big mystery about this perv?
I don't. You tell me.
Well, the big mystery is that he's a confessional perv, I guess, because he
I
loves
mean,
hearing
kind of.
confessions.
I mean, he does. I don't know. Like the show never really commits one way or the other. I'm sure it's because of it being a network show.
I'm sure he's a perv. He's one of those kind of pervs that loves hearing those kind of
I
stories.
mean,
I'm sure,
maybe.
like
I'm
he
not
just
gonna
seems lit
say it's impossible, but
because he falls in love with a woman he doesn't even know, and she's like very sexualized. And she says it's this one woman's name, and turns out, folks, that it's not.
I think.
That's the
But
big
one of the things
twist.
that I want people to notice, I think there's a big difference between season 1 and 3, just in terms of the way the focus, like the plot is really secondary at this point to what's going on between Cybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis. You notice that in both of the episodes that we watched this week, right?
Of course, especially that car scene where he gets all defensive about like believing in God and shit, and she's kind of agnostic and like he's all up in her shit
It's
about it.
really,
I'm like,
I mean, because usually the way it goes is that she's like the morally uptight one. He's Mr. Loosey Goosey. Like we literally get that in this 10 minute like non sequitur. Like Bruce Willis is, I mean, he's really channeling Bugs Bunny with the whole telescope, and then he puts it away, and then these cartoonishly large binoculars that he's using, and then he has to make a phone call to apologize to a woman he was leering at, and I guess she was into it. Just comedy and hijinks are ensuing, and like it's great stuff, but boy, you could see the candle is burning really bright, and I mean, this stuff has a shelf life. It really does. But I mean, the chemistry is very much there in this first of 2 episodes that we're talking about, and I mean, their chemistry is so electric that it carries everything. And Brad Dourif, like he is the main reason that I picked this episode, just because him as a priest is hilarious. I think he brings a lot of intensity. He's not as intense as Edward James almost, but he's up there. And this is a very interesting plot line, but again, it feels secondary because like the first couple minutes, it's focused on like what the premise is. Like he's working in a soup kitchen, and then he's being a creep in the confectional, I guess, falling in love with this woman, and then I mean, you get that 10 minute scene with David and Maddie, and like it somehow it weaves all the way back to being about what's going to happen with the priest, which I appreciate. But man, this episode is all over the place, but I do think it works. I think the problem is that they are on like they're it's such a delicate thing that they absolutely lose it at some point. And if we were reviewing seasons 4 and 5, I think we would see how badly they lost it. But it's clicking here, and this is a really, really good episode overall. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts. Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, but just to hit on some of these points.
Yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning when we started watching Moonlighting, or when I started watching Moonlighting, I felt like this dynamic can only last like 3 seasons. And based on the 5 seasons, as it turns out, I think I'm right based on the math of these things. Because like I know we talk about Sam and Diane is like kind of like that archetype. I wouldn't say it's the archetype, but it's kind of like the closest model because it's like closer in timeline wise. But you got to think of Ross and Rachel too. And I think they hooked up in like season 2 or 3 or something. I kind of watched the earlier seasons and they kind of drifted off, but it didn't take long for them to get together and then break off because once you do that, it's like you kind of mess with the dynamic of the show. Of course, that's kind of what you fear here. It's like if they hook up, what's going to happen? And you kind of get that feeling in The Office, but The Office kind of countered that when Jim and Pam hooked up and they actually got married and like carried that relationship out because I guess that dynamic didn't die down because they were always like playing off each other and they were just doing pranks. In this case, it's like what happens when they do hook up is that flame going to burn out because it's like, is the chase just the attraction? You know what I'm saying? If that happens.
I
That
mean, I
suddenly
think that's
happens.
the I think that a lot of shows, the gimmick used to be the explosive chemistry of will they or won't they, but they're not really right for each other. Like I feel like Sam and Diane, like yes, maybe the sexual chemistry is there, but everything else is just not gonna work. But then I think the problem is what happens when that explosive chemistry manifests and they do sleep with each other, and I think you lose something. And I think the part of the issue is like once you like have them get together and then you separate them, it's like what are we doing? It just I don't think it works. So I think what has happened lately with a lot of Mike Schur shows is that once the characters have gotten together, they kind of stay together, and I think that's actually kind of worked out better because I don't think I think when you split them, it becomes a real distraction, and I think Cheers ultimately suffered from some of that in seasons 4 and 5. Is that the focus was just so much on the Sam and Diane relationship that everything else was kind of getting lost by the wayside. And then once Diane leaves, you can bring the supporting characters back into focus. And I think that's why Cheers was able to go 11 seasons as opposed to burning out really quickly. Because there's no way, if Diane stays, there's no way to get to season 11. There's just no way. And I mean, this show is even more like clearly like Cybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis. Like there was a lot of tension there. Bruce Willis is also on the verge of becoming a movie star. Like when we're talking about season 3, we're literally talking about he is like a year away from starting to shoot Die Hard. So we're almost at that point where he is going to have this big explosion, and I think it's really obvious that it's coming because you could definitely see him kind of just improving as an actor, improving as a performer, the charisma really shining through. Like it feels much more of an even dynamic. Whereas I think when you watch the pilot, it feels like a Sybil Shepherd show, and Bruce Willis is there as kind of a side, not a side character, but more in an antagonistic way, and they feel more like equals by the time we get to this episode.
Yeah, that's the vibe I'm getting too, and it's because of for me, I'm kind of jumping ahead and stuff like that, but that's kind of the vibe I'm getting too. Especially with that dialogue in the car, like that was a really fascinating dialogue, and I kind of texted you, like you kind of mentioned the Kevin Smith dialogue kind of vibe, and I started to kind of see it, and I kind of pictured Randall just going off, because like Randall goes off when he goes off in Clerks and Clerks 2. And I could just kind of picture
Yeah.
Randall saying the things he was saying about God and all this stuff to Dante, who would be the agnostic one in the car, right? So just I kind of pictured that. I was like, okay, I can kind of see how Kevin Smith picked up his dialogue. But that means this dialogue is really good. And it's like really like I was kind of shocked, like this doesn't seem like TV dialogue. Because even Miami Vice will have dialogue that sounds like very much TV dialogue-ish, right? But this kind of
Mm,
breaks that mold a little bit. And even to a point where Bruce Willis is like winking at the camera. I was like, okay, he's doing the Deadpool gimmick because this does break the fourth wall occasionally, but he did it at the right time because like you got to cue that thing at the right time. Whenever you do a wink at the audience, it's got to be at the right moment. If you do it like too cutesy, it's going to stick
yeah.
out, but he did it at the right time. So I was really impressed with that whole like that discussion right there. It revealed a lot about his character. It made me think that Bruce Willis's character like might be voting MAGA in Florida kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like this like
Yeah.
conservative guy that doesn't really like kind of compromise, right? And that's kind of what he's like. He doesn't want to compromise at all at this situation with the priest, not until the end, at least until like the comeuppance happens. But he just really wanted to get at the priest for like wanting to leave his job as a priest. And I was like, wow, why is he so like obsessed with this guy like leaving and making a personal decision. It's like it's not his decision, but he felt like it was a message from God or something, right? That he had to intervene or something with this guy's life. I don't know, like you know what I mean? Like, and it kind of felt like a parallel
They're
with the
definitely
priest.
playing some with they're definitely playing in very interesting territory because a lot of network shows are not dealing with religion in this way in such a nuanced, complicated way. Because again, like Bruce Willis's character David, like he's the one that's very much like I don't know that we should take this case. Like he's very clear, clearly loose with his morals, but like he's definitely got a hard line, and it's really fascinating to see. I mean, this really is the peak of the show. This is the peak of the greatness of the show when things are clicking on all cylinders, and Bruce Willis is not too famous, and Cybil Shepherd hasn't had twins yet. So you're really getting the best of the best, and when you get an episode like this, like it's a real pleasure to watch. I mean, this to me is the show at its best, and I mean, you also have a great guest star. Brad Dourif is a great guest star, and I think that the way that the show deals with religion is a huge win because I don't think it's necessarily coming out as anti-religion, but it definitely is pointing out some of the issues that the priesthood has.
And on the lighter side of things, like this episode does have its comedy moments, especially with like Sybil Shepherd admitting that when she was at her therapist the last time that the therapist fell asleep, and I thought was what made the therapist fall asleep was like was it she tired or whatever, and then they go fast forward to Sybil Shepherd actually talking to a priest in a confessional, and the priest himself falls asleep. So I was thinking like, oh, it's one of
It's
those
really
things where
good.
like it's ASMR. Like there wasn't really like that term back then, but now because a lot of people use them to sleep and use little YouTube videos like I do, and like white noise or whatever, like it's just her voice is like it puts people to sleep, and it's not necessarily her fault. It's just like like tones, right? Like just natural tones from her vocal cords that put people to sleep, and it's just like that's a great joke because I think that does happen in real life, and we couldn't really explain as to why in the '80s that kind of happened to some people because
Yeah,
you've heard of this thing before where people talk and then people just fall asleep to them talking, and it's like, well, that's happened to me when I was in college and my professor was just jabbering about stuff that I wasn't paying attention to. Then I would fall asleep. Was it because of the subject matter itself, or was it because his voice was so like like tonal to the point where it put me to sleep? So I thought that was a really fascinating thing, man. And it was like this joke that ran through the whole episode. So that was really
yep,
good. And yeah, just Brad Dourif being a real perv. And the twist, I gotta admit, like that was the icing on the cake because the writing with the twist of the murder, because I was like, so I guess she killed herself, and then there was like this big guilt thing, and then there's gonna be this dark episode, and I was like, well, we got 10 minutes left. I wonder if there's gonna be like a twist, and then Brad Dourif did
absolutely.
this big clue where, like he said, she blew her face off, but I never saw her face, and I was like, oh, oh, and then I kind of started like putting things together, and then like the husband was very suspect, and then I kind of figured it out in my head, and I was kind of proud of myself. So I love when I do that with mystery, murder stuff. That's why I love the Sherlock seasons from BBC. So yeah, total win for my part when I figured out the murder. And then it turns out that it's the actress from Suspiria, folks. So that's a big like wow. So if you ever seen Suspiria, she's the main ballerina, not the remake, but the original. So that was really cool. So and no wonder her voice was so like sexual and intoxicating because she's known for that in the giallo category of horror. So there you go.
Absolutely. I mean, for the me, this is an 8.5 out of 10. This episode and
Yeah,
even the
I'm at
next
eight and a
episode.
half as well. 8.5.
So let's talk about the next episode where we get a Billy Joel song, we get Bruce Willis dancing, we get a fantastic musical number in the middle of this, and this is very different because there really isn't even a mystery. Like we get a little bit at the beginning where David is I don't know if they're alluding to real life things, but David has got too drunk, overslept, and missed an important meeting with a client, and then he finds out, I guess, that his brother-in-law has died, and then he has to go to New York. And David Addison is in a very dark place, like basically a functioning alcoholic. And then one of his friends dies, and he goes to New York. And this episode is very much focused on the relationship between Maddie and David. And I think that this might be the best episode of the series. I think we're reviewing a couple more later in season 3 that are also really good, but I think this might be the best episode of Moonlighting that we have that we will be talking about.
it's very like romantic, but anti-romantic, if that makes sense. Like it's so much like, like I gotta
Yeah,
travel across the country to find my lover and support him in their time of need. But then she can't like explicitly say why as to why she feels that way. And then I think truthfully she didn't want to be there to support him. I think she was just wanting to find out what the wife looked like, to be honest. I think that was the whole thing. And
I
she
mean,
couldn't really admit it to herself. And
yeah,
then she just ended up there. And then she ended up like, okay, this dude needs support. He's really down on his luck, and I'll be there to support him. And it'll strengthen our friendship and relationship. And then it kind of sort of backfires, but doesn't really because they kind of reveal a lot about each other, especially David. So, and the whole twist is that he knocked up a girl at 18 years old, right? Wasn't really in love with her, had to get married. They lost the baby, and then what do you do? Are you going to stick together? They stick together, and she cheats on him with another woman. So he's not really like upset that it's another woman, so to speak. Even though I guess he
yeah.
lies to Maddie just to make it seem like, I guess she doesn't. I guess he would think that Maddie may be like uncomfortable with like gay relationships. Is that the thing? Because
I
like I
mean,
think he's
perhaps.
fine that like, he's not really pissed off that it was a woman. He was just more pissed off that he was cheated on, which is totally relatable, obviously.
Yeah,
So and just like I guess he lies just to kind of cover up certain aspects, but he still sort of tells the truth about the situation. But I don't know. It's just very revealing, and there's no plot line, but essentially it's just not archetype work, but just character
this
work in
is
general.
purely about their
Yeah,
relationship, and I mean, I think that again, you're burning really hot, so you've got limited, you got like this limited amount of space to do this, but I think it just works out really well. I think again the chemistry is there, and I mean I think you really see it in the dance number that happens like towards the beginning of this episode. Like this is not a show that is unafraid to just go wild with some of this stuff, and we're not talking about the next episode, but like the next episode they literally like parody Taming of a Shrew for the whole episode, and there is a Christmas episode which I do think that in December we might end up just reviewing this on its own. That is basically mimicking It's a Wonderful Life. So I do think we're going to save that for December. I don't know if there's a Miami Vice Christmas episode for us to look at, but I think it would be a good idea. But yeah, I mean, this is just about their relationship, and like the sexual chemistry is kind of taking a back burner. I think they're really doing the work of making this more of an emotional connection, which I think is a good thing. Like again, in a world where these two are not just these volcanic personalities that kind of ruin everything for everybody, because again, Bruce Willis becomes a movie star and Sybil Shepherd can't get along with anybody. So it's just unfortunate that we could not truly realize the potential of like, what if these two really were getting along in real life and they could like get to the ending of this show and really like in a satisfying way, not like we got canceled after 67 episodes. Like this shows you the potential of these two when things are going well and when things are going right, and the storytelling that they're able to put forth. And I mean, look, Bruce Willis is the one that's going to have the bigger career at this point. Afterward, I mean, Sybil Shepherd, again, she did have a sitcom, but like she really kind of fades more into the background, as is the want of people, and when it comes to women. So it's just really unfortunate that like we don't get a satisfying ending to this. Like this is a great episode, and it's a great opportunity to kind of explore the relationship in a very different way than we're used to. Because I mean, like you get the cattiness at the beginning, but like then this is truly an evolution of their relationship where they're not just colleagues and partners, but they're friends and maybe something more. So like it sucks. Like there is not a satisfying conclusion to this ultimately, but like the potential was there to do something really special because you see it throughout these two episodes, but especially this
yeah, that sweet magic number, man. 3 seasons seems to be it. Like if this seems like it was kind of set up to end in 3 seasons. I don't know, maybe. Does it feel
one. I
like
don't
that?
know.
Because
I
it
mean,
seems
I
like
think the
this
problem is,
because
I
this
think,
is not the finale of the season, but it seems like they're building to this big moment towards the end of the season that we're not going to get. It seems like. Does it make sense?
well, I mean, I will say you are going to get you're not going to get actual closure, but there is going to be a payoff, which we will
Okay.
talk about next week. We will.
Okay.
There is a
Okay.
payoff, but
I
the
also wanted
problem
to
is
point out. Okay, go ahead.
the problem is what happens after the payoff. That's where the problem comes in.
Okay. Well, there is probably the answer. I just wanted to point out that this episode ends with them on a plane, and I couldn't help but think of Sam and Diane on that plane at the last episode of Cheers, man, and that kind of parallel. But I'm just saying, just something about that, right?
Well,
Um,
all I'm going to say is Sam and Diane do not end up together, and I mean, again, we'll talk about it next week, but it does end that place.
okay.
We did get Curtis Armstrong this week. His character is perfectly acceptable and cromulent in these two episodes, but he becomes a bigger factor as the show kind of goes downhill.
So, just for
Because
the record, this is Snot from Revenge of the Nerds,
yes,
right? Okay, so I low key think this guy might be a millionaire and we don't know it, only because like it's not only this, but God knows how much he's getting for American Dad on residuals, right? Like, because his lawyer must have been like, if you're going to sign my client up for a Seth MacFarlane show, right? You better give him residuals, knowing that like Seth MacFarlane shows get a lot of playtime on TV because American Dad is on TV every fucking day, and that dude is on it every
I
fucking
mean, so is
time.
Family Guy. That's the thing about
Yeah,
these
but he's
animated
not on
shows. They
Family
put
Guy,
it
but specifically, but like American Dad, like God, I mean, even though it's a secondary show in the in his universe, the Seth universe, it's like, damn, dude, that show gets a lot of play. So I'm guessing this dude makes a lot of money on the side and like conventions and stuff. But yeah, even though it's like this role, Snot, and then him being the voice, I think there's three big roles, and he's like, I don't know, I feel like he's a big time moneymaker that we just don't realize because of his reputation. So, but yeah, and then I got to know, like, you can ruin it for me. So he hooks up with the receptionist, right? Like that's the
correct.
implication.
Correct. That's
Okay.
where we're headed with that. I will talk
Or
about
did they
again. I will
already
talk.
hook up? Or okay,
I'll talk about I'll give the ending of the show. I will talk about it next week.
okay, because it feels like yeah, those kind of vibes. So yeah, it was very interesting because it's not in a romantic relationship on the show. Did not expect that, but they treated it very serious. So there you go.
Again, he becomes a very big factor, and it's a definite sign that of jumping for sure.
Okay, so on to Miami Vice. This is season one, episode. I believe it's 8 or 7. It's the one with Bruce Willis. It's something else, man. Bruce Willis is the heel in this episode. He's playing an arms dealer, and like, man, it's called No Exit, episode 8. And man, he is one of those heels that you just want to smack in the face. To like, this episode features the feds, and every time the feds are on Miami Vice, it's like they're always fucking up, and they're always like enemies to Miami Vice. You know what I mean? But in this case,
Yes.
like, it's like this guy's so bad that every single one of those guys wanted to beat the shit out of Bruce Willis because like they all saw him like totally like abuse her his wife, and that was just like, man, what a heel. I mean, Jesus, man, because like they show it, like the
I mean,
physicality and him
the thing
yelling
is
at her.
that you really
Oh,
have to buy that the wife at the end, and I'm going to give away the ending right away, but like I feel it's important. Like you have to be able to justify as a show that's running on a mainstream network why she would do what she did, and that is shoot him. And we don't even see him. We don't see her actually shoot him. I think that's the implication, and I think that's what happens. But like you have to justify that, and I think that him being as big of a piece of shit as he is, that's how they justify it. And it is a dark ending because like he either gets murdered or he's going to get away with it because the feds are going to use him for other deals and to try to get other cartel members, I guess, or other people who are dealing arms. Right? That is the
that's my
implication.
assumption too. Yeah, because that's always the MO with the feds when they come in, is like they're always trying to strike a deal with the guy they're trying to catch and give him the lighter sense and get all these bigger fish, right? But it never ends up that way
Right?
because they can never even
I
catch the
mean,
smaller fish.
the whole gimmick is that cops always go for like the low end, and then the feds are always going for the high end, and that's kind of how it works. But I the thing is that I think in the last probably 30, 40 years, I don't know when the inflection point, maybe 9/11 really was the inflection point for this, but There was a time when like the federal government, the FBI, the CIA, like they were generally portrayed as incompetent. Think about Die Hard. Like think about how incompetent the FBI specifically was treated in that movie. And obviously Miami Vice is kind of playing in that same playground of the FBI is incompetent. These super sexy Miami Vice cops are just trying to do their best, but these damn FBI people are just ruining everything. And now we are at a point when like the FBI and CIA are lionized. I mean, think about how many Jack Ryan interpretations we've had, and all the shows that are about cops and all the propaganda that's airing across the networks. I mean, look at CBS as a network, how many FBI shows there are, but never ever forget, Brian, that the FBI is grossly incompetent. And I would encourage anyone to do a Google search about the FBI's history, and you will understand how grossly incompetent they are. So I'm not necessarily taking the cop side in this, but I will tell you that the portrayal of the FBI and how buffoonishly stupid they are seems incredibly accurate.
Yeah, and that's going to be a consistent theme throughout, and that's going to lead to Crockett and Tubbs pretty much quitting on the spot in season 5 after the feds interfere again. In that case, it was with a dictator played by Ian McShane, playing a Spanish dictator. Colombian, maybe, I don't know, but you know how it is with the casting of the show. Yeah, so this back to this episode. This is, I think, maybe one of the first times you see Tubbs being a Jamaican, or maybe he was playing Jamaican before, but like this where I bring up this fact that, or this thing that where I think that Tubbs, man, is such a more well-rounded character because of all these different accents and all these different portrayals he has to
It's
do
weird, man.
compared to,
It is
because
really,
Crockett
really
is still
strange.
one note, but like Philip Michael Thomas is like doing the legwork with all this extra stuff, man, and the pay, you know what I mean? And the pay discrepancy issue, it was like, man, I feel like Philip Michael Thomas like got screwed over a little bit for at least 2 or 3 seasons. And once they fixed some of his pay, it still wasn't enough. And still he was doing all this like extra stuff. And it did feel like they improved the action sequence from the first episode. Like it felt like they, I don't know. I don't know if they changed the stunt coordinator or something like that, but the action is up the ante. They spent more money on the action.
Yeah, it
I
feels like
guess
they're
the
getting
ratings
more of a
were,
budget. Yeah,
yeah, except it
definitely.
looks like the budget got kind of bigger once they started to notice, like, okay, maybe we have a big hit here because this is only episode 8, so they must have like started to pick up on things. And Edward James almost had just joined the show, and man, I guess we didn't see his intro to the show. I think that's the previous episode, but allegedly, there's a scene famously that goes around on like social media and stuff when you look at Miami Vice. Is like when they first meet Crockett and Tubbs. Is like, or when James almost meets Crockett and Tubbs. He's like, he doesn't look at their face, and then like Philip Michael Thomas says something, and then Edward James almost goes, "Don't you ever get in my face again, ever." And then he gives him a look, and then Philip Michael Thomas like goes off camera, and he goes like, "What the fuck?" And then fucking Sonny Crockett has to like shove him off camera, like, "Come on, buddy." And that was totally like ad libbed, and it created this tension where it's like, now I created a character where you can't fuck with me, kind of thing, right? It's like almost like a coach coming into a team that's kind of run kind of loose, right? And then all of a sudden this new coach comes in, is like, you are not
Right.
going to fuck around.
Because like the thing about this episode and the next one is that like they're not at odds with Edward James Olmos's character at all. And I think that's really like that shows his power. I think like that intensity really comes across, and the fact that he is able to control these two wackaloon cops. I mean, he's absolutely the person that you need. But I really like the fact that they're not going with the typical dynamic of badge and gun on my desk or something like that. Like there's clearly a respect that's there. And I don't know, maybe we're certainly not doing a comprehensive discussion of every episode. So perhaps there are episodes when tension is established, but you don't get it here. And I think that's actually refreshing because again, it's a movie trope that you see in every cop movie that's ever been made.
Yeah, he's pretty much a hard ass, and he does it on purpose. He does it to gain the respect of not just like, you know, the characters themselves, but like the actors themselves. And there was a lot of tension with Don Johnson, so that's all I can say. You got to look up the interviews with Edward James Olmos. He pretty much just said 5 times to Michael Mann, "No, I can't do this because the contract situation. He didn't want to be tied down, and that's totally respectable as an actor because he could have been jumping to doing anything at any time. And I think he was like early developing Lean on Me, or not, it was Stand By Me. And then eventually Michael Mann said, "Okay, we're gonna give you an open contract. You have to give us a 60-day out, and we'll give you all this extra money on top of that." And he finally said yes. So he, not only that, like he finally learned how to negotiate Hollywood style. He said, which is kind of funny because like yeah, that's a total thing. Like Hollywood negotiating 101. There you go. Keep saying no, and it's kind of mimicking indie wrestling when like a guy says like, "I'm not going to do a barbed wire match unless you give me $10,000," and then Ian Ron goes somehow gets $10,000 for a guy. That's kind of an inside kind of joke there. Jimmy Jacobs, wink, wink. But it's the same kind of premise with Edward James Olmos. He knew how to negotiate, so and he brings this intensity to the show, and he's like my favorite character on the show, to be honest, next to Tubbs. And he's just really, really intense. But the thing is like what happens is like because of the diversity of the show, there's hardly like any room for Asian characters, it seems like. And whenever there's like an Asian themed episode, whether it's Chinese or Japanese, Edward James Olmos' character becomes like the de facto guy because he married a Japanese woman, so he knows, Asian culture. So every time there's an Asian culture episode, he's like the star of the episode. So it's kind of unfortunate it kind of landed that way, but it is what it is. But yeah, this episode ends on a down note, so to speak. But I don't know. I think that woman, I don't know, she deserved her justice, man, because that dude,
I mean, she certainly deserves some
yeah.
justice.
I don't want to
Justice.
say what he did out loud because it's so vile. Like,
I mean,
you know
it's
what I'm saying?
terrible.
Like,
It's. I mean, the thing about this episode is that you want him to feel justice more because of what he did to his wife and less because of the arms dealing. The arms dealing isn't great, and certainly people are getting killed because of his actions. But like it's that personal thing that he's doing that's absolutely ridiculous, and in a real life society should not be tolerated. But I'm sure that it would be because this is how we are. And yeah, I think that's what you're really making a connection with. And I think that what Miami Vice has done well is to set up these moral dichotomies and making you realize that things are not as easy and clean cut as you might believe. And it feels like even a lot of cop shows these days are not as nuanced as Miami Vice is, which I think is also really really interesting. But for me, like this was definitely the show at at a very very high level, very high level.
yeah, this gets an 8 out of 10 for me. It kind of got over the top ridiculous with the heel work, but that's kind of comes with the territory, and even with wrestling, we've known that like heels can go over the top once they reach that certain level of like crashing down and like getting too over the top with crazy with the heel work. But this was just enough to get that hatred going, and so to speak, you wanted to pay to see the guy get beat up, right? That's the whole idea of a heel. So, and in that case, it worked
And
because at one point
you don't really
Crockett
get
like
that I mean, you do get some I don't know. Do you get the satisfaction? Because I mean, she's going to get indicted for murder or manslaughter at the very least,
I
and
I I don't know. I hope she gets like a lighter sentence. That's my hope. But she seemed to be so dead set on it because I think I get it's more of the guilt she feels for what the husband did or what Bruce Willis did to the people that tried to help her out. That's where I'm going to go with it. I don't want to explicitly say what he did, but I think there's more of that guilt factor, which is again the moral gray stuff, which I think Miami Vice like kind of like is like that's where it like stands out, and especially seasons 1 and 2, like yeah for sure, and that's what we're gonna get to in season 2 with Out Where the Buses Don't Run, starring Bruce McGill. And did you know that Dennis Hopper was supposed to be in the starring role
yeah,
and
I
backed
read
out?
that. And look, Dennis Hopper probably would have done a really good job, but I think he would have overwhelmed the stars of the show. And I think when you cast Bruce McGill does a really good job and gives a really good performance, but he doesn't overstay. Like I think it's still really important that the main characters are the main characters, and he's still a supporting character. And if Dennis Hopper is doing this role instead, he becomes the main character.
Right. And what's crazy about this episode is that it's less about Crockett and Tubbs and more about this guy going through a mental
It
breakdown,
is
essentially.
right, like yeah, that's what it is. But like I do think that it is important. Like he is the focal point of the episode as he should be, given what the payoff is.
But he's
But
not overshadowing your stars, right? Like I
he
think
should
that's the
not be
key.
overshadowing the
Yeah.
stars.
And Dennis Hopper would have definitely done that, considering like if you ever seen God, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
I mean, Super
Good
Mario
God.
Brothers 1993, and Dennis Hopper started.
Yeah.
started
Yeah. And speed for Christ's sake. But we know he could do this, but Bruce
yes,
McGill was probably the better choice in the long run because a little more nuanced, a little more subtle, a little more grittiness on the face. You know what I mean? He had a lot of wear and tear on that face. It looked like he lived that life. So basically, he's an ex-cop, and what
remember
happens
that?
is,
Yeah,
yeah. So basically, he's an ex-cop, and that he was working on this case for 3 years to get this guy Tony Arcaro, who's a big-time dealer in Miami, and gets away with a technicality. Again, probably something the feds fucked up. I'm assuming because it's the feds, right? And so he disappears, and then all of a sudden, this cop, he doesn't disappear, but he goes into like a mental institution. He stops becoming a cop, comes back all these years later, says Tony Arcaro's still around, and starts like predicting all these events that start happening. And how does he start doing this? Well, he's spying on everybody basically with a computer, a supercomputer that he built on his own. And he's spying on everybody. And he keeps saying that Tony Arcaro's still out there, right? And he's obsessed with him. And he's like crazy, like you don't know whether to trust him. And he's doing all these impressions because he's crazy, like he's doing
But he
Scotty.
seems harmless. Like that's the gimmick is that he seems harmless, and then you realize, oh no, he's not harmless. Like
But and also the track
bad.
record. Apparently, the track record was like on point up until the mental breakdown, obviously. But so it was like, should we trust him? And he's kind of right on everything. Should we keep trusting him? And then he's right about a lot of events that take place. And he keeps saying Tony Arcaro's behind all of it, but it's really just like his henchmen that have been taken over the years that have been behind all. He's just right and calling everything that's happening, but he's just kind of blaming everything on Tony Arcaro because he's obsessed with the guy. And
Yeah.
then it turns out that lo and behold, that after all these years, he actually killed the guy and hit him in the fucking wall, and that his partner David
This
Strather
is
had
a
helped him bury him.
very gnarly episode. I cannot believe this aired on
So
NBC.
my reaction the first time when I watched this, I was like expecting him to either be alive or that like maybe he was dead and that his son took over and it's still like Tony Arcaro Jr. or something. But I did not expect that this dude actually killed him and has been in total
I mean,
denial of it.
they showed a mutilated, I mean not mutilated, but like a dead body, like basically mummified, and they showed a headshot. Like I was stunned that they showed both of those things. Again, this is airing on NBC in 1985. I mean, that is unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
Luckily, they didn't show the bullet going in, but they do show the remnants
They
of the
show
headshot.
him dead. I
And then
mean,
it goes head down, like obviously, anytime you see a guy at a table that gets murdered, he goes head down at the table. So they're
like
very mafia hit on
it's
point. And then, this big reveal, like, so I texted Jerome, like, after he saw the episode, I was like, imagine if Batman killed the Joker and didn't tell anybody. You know what I mean? Like, this is the same reaction I think Batman would have. Like, he wouldn't admit it because he wouldn't admit that he would break. You know what I mean? And this guy broke, and he doesn't want to admit that he broke, right? Like, that's the whole thing.
that
And
is the
so
gimmick.
so remember I texted you, like, remember what you said about closure versus what, acceptance or something like that? Like that great
Yeah,
quote you had.
that's a very real thing. I mean, this is closure
So
before
this
you
is him
started
getting
to accept it.
closure by like forced acceptance or something like that. It's either you get closure or you get or like acceptance or whatever. And he's like, he needs closure, and he's kind of forcing it upon himself subconsciously because he consciously doesn't want to admit that he killed this guy. It's crazy, and it's just like, wow. It's like it's not even more about like Crockett and Tubbs. It's about this moral gray area where like
Yeah, I mean,
this,
because the last 10
yeah,
minutes of this episode, you don't know, is he leading them to like his own dead body because he's going to kill himself? Like, is that where we're headed with this? But like, I mean, that it's a dramatic reveal, and Bruce McGill does a great job because I mean, he just lulls you into this sense of like, oh, he's just a goofy comedy guy, like he's harmless, but I mean, it's really one of the darkest endings that you can see on an episode of TV, especially given where we're at, 1985. I mean, I know that this show has a reputation for kind of being like, oh, it's like MTV Cops, but man, like this show is way darker than I expected. Like this show is not, and I'm sure that there are. I do believe that there are some lighter episodes, but man, like I think reducing this to MTV Cops is kind of an insult. Like this is not like Vince McMahon taking over the WWF and turning it into a cartoon. Like this is definitely like, yes, they are using popular music, and yes, they're definitely going in some interesting directions, but like there is still an edge here that you just don't get even with cop shows now.
yeah, and it's the strength of the writing of the first two seasons, and that's when Michael Mann had the reins pretty much. And there's a good point that someone kind of brought up when I was kind of looking up reviews of the 2006 movie, kind of like trying to see if like maybe I was kind of too harsh on it. But it seems like kind of the thing is like when you have Michael Mann as director, it's different than when you have Michael Mann as like executive producer, right? Because he's not in total control. So I think it's these other creatives that like added these other elements to it that you don't get in the movie, right? You still get that darkness, but you don't get like these like the pastel colors to match it in the music. So I think this is like that perfect mix of it because like the beginning of this episode, you get your celebrity cameo. You get like Little Richard, right, as a preacher, right, and you get
I mean,
like
what a great
the
stinger!
Who,
Like, it's such a great stinger because I mean, you get Richard, you get Little Richard, but you also have that woman who like gets really mad and is like super religious, but then is like kicking this guy and hitting with her Bible. I mean,
a drug
it's
dealer,
really
beating
funny
a drug
stuff.
dealer up with a Bible, basically, and it's like, what does this have to do with the main plot? And you realize they're being spied on by Bruce McGill, so that kind of sets everything up,
Yeah,
and everything kind of unravels from there. But it was a good kind of like cold opening, especially with the Who and the way they used it. And for the record, it's Baba O'Reilly and it's not Teenage Wasteland, and I think that's a big confusion for a ton of people. But yeah, just great use of music. Light on the celebrity cameo because do you want to you don't want to go too heavy in the celebrity cameo kind of thing with this
you
kind of
tell me.
plot line. And I feel like this plot line kind of influenced maybe a Seven kind of ending, right? Or like what was another dark ending that I'm trying to think of besides like Seven? I guess that's like the go-to, right? Right?
I mean,
Uh,
you look at shows like Homicide, like On the Street, The Wire, like
or like the that ending of that SVU episode where Carl McLaughlin shoots the kid. I think
maybe.
that
I
kind
mean,
of
like Law
maybe.
and Order is its own. Like Law and Order is very much its own thing, and I have very mixed feelings about it, as you might imagine. But like to me, like the really good cop shows like this, and to me, like Homicide and The Wire, like those are the ones that really stand out. I think you see a lot. You see some of those elements. Again, you do see the MTV Cops thing. Like that is real. Like there's clearly some style being put into this, but I mean, there's a lot of substance as well. This to me was the strongest episode that we've watched of Miami Vice or of Moonlighting. I mean, I think this. I can see why this was ranked as the 90th best
Yeah,
episode.
it's this is my favorite. Like, there's nothing that tops this. Like, there's some stuff that really gets gut wrenching and close to this kind of like emotional gut punch, right? And again, I spoil some stuff in some about some future episodes later, but yeah, this is like it's kind of sets it up for like in the future episodes, it sets you up for like these darker endings to come, which you get accustomed to in the show. But this is the first time I feel like it really stood out with the music, especially Dire Straits. And I guess the song is like you got to like really put on the captions and kind of read the lyrics and kind of read into it more because I guess the song's about like, brothers in arms. It's like deaths and war and like fighting, brothers in arms and war and kind of thing. And I think it had to do with like Ireland or something like that, like Dire Straits. I think it's from like England or something, but you know what I mean, like that
Very,
dark.
very good use of a Dire Straits song. Very good.
Yeah, and it just fit the mood and everything. So 9.5 out of 10. I don't know if it's a perfect 10 because there's some kind of some like stuff that may be a little too comedy-ish, like with the Peter Lorre impressions. Is like, wow, this dude did a Peter Lorre impression out of nowhere, kind of thing. But that's the character. But yeah, this is definitely the strongest episode that I've ever seen of Miami Vice, and probably will. I'm doubting the last four episodes of the lost episodes of season five are going to ever top that. So I'm pretty sure this is the best. Next week's going to be interesting because I'm kind of more focused on kind of like the what happens into season three and onward, and more of the focus of the celebrities. Because I think I'm not going to spoil it, but I think Jerome's going to be like, "What the fuck?" when he sees these two names coming up in next week's episode. So, what are Moonlighting's episodes for next week?
So we will be discussing season 3 again. We will be watching episodes 10 and 14, which are very very important episodes. All that's all I will say.
So we're gonna kind of continue that Calderon storyline, right, with Tubbs. Calderon's dead, but he's got kids, folks. So that's kind of a preview for that. It's one episode, but it's kind of like a darker again ending. I know Jerome's gonna have a fit at the ending because he hates it when people get fridged, right? So that's all I'm gonna say. It's called Sons and Lovers. It's the season finale of season two, and then season three. It is Streetwise, episode 10. I'm not going to reveal the names. It involves an undercover cop. It involves a drug dealer, but two names that would go on to be kind of big names in the 90s. So that's all I'm going to say.
All right. So for Brian, I'm Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.